Hey there guys, this is Malorian and this is a Warmachine 101, and today what we're going to be talking about is Colossals and Colossal deployments. Now, especially with the different changes from the errata where a lot of things are kind of countered Colossals, or kind of, like Gorman are taking more of a backseat, stuff like that. We're going to be seeing the new Colossals coming out. It's more of an importance to know how you use your Colossals, but right from the get-go, how you deploy them. This is really because whenever you're running Colossals or Gargantuans, there are a lot of points, so you're going to have a very small army, and so even the very small parts of deployment and how you move the models around the board is going to be absolutely critical to how you do. It's not like when you're running a list with like 80 dudes, you just kind of like swarm them up. No, you only have like 10 models, and it's absolutely key where everyone is positioned. Now, the first thing we have to look at that when you're trying to deal with it is the terrain. And the main type of terrain you're going to be caring about for your Colossals are really just these here. You're going to have your hills, your walls, your obstructions, and your forests. You could have other things like rough terrain and rivers and stuff, but they're kind of captured within this stuff here. Trenches, they don't really come into it at all. These are really the main things you're going to be really looking for. So first of all, hills. Why are hills so important? Well, hills are important because whenever you have a Colossal that's on a hill, it can see over anything that's really anything. Anything that is base size or smaller, it can see over. So for anything that's going to be shooting, that's a fantastic benefit. You really want to get your Colossal on a hill if you can. And so right away, if there's a hill somewhere near deployment or somewhere a little bit farther up, you really want to be taking advantage of that. And remember, you don't need to be on the very top of the hill. You just need to be having like the littlest of toes on that hill, and all of a sudden you get that massive line of sight bonus. And normally, of course, that's great for other things too, right? You'll get a +2 defense for elevation for regular models. However, the negative is that they can see you as well. Well, with Colossals, they can always see your Colossal anyway, so it really doesn't matter. So really, when it comes to Colossals, hills are like the golden land. This is where you want to be if possible. Now, the next one we can talk about is forests. Now, normally forests are bad unless you're a Legion player or something, and that's because most of your units will need Pathfinder to go through it. Your Colossal, on the other hand, really doesn't care. So for a lot of times, like unless you have something specific where maybe you're running a unit with Prowl or something like this that wants to be in the forest to get that Prowl bonus to go to stealth or something, a lot of times it's really good to be setting up your Colossal in the forest, because then that leaves the other areas open for your other troops. Of course, if I put my Colossal here, well, now all of a sudden I've used up a lot of my deployment space, and my other troops will either be forced into a small area, or maybe some of them even have to slog through the trees. So a lot of times, it's not that your Colossal likes being in this forest, but at the same time, it likes it a lot more than anything else. Now, something to keep in mind with Colossals is that most models only have 3 inches line of sight. However, they can always see your Colossal. So keep that in mind, that if you have something like this, a model here would be able to see your Colossal, but your Colossal wouldn't be able to see it. So do watch out for that. However, you could also use forest defensively. Let's say that you have some troops coming in, some Weapon Master, Forge Guard, or whatever it is. You could actually be setting up in something like this, where, especially if you're a little bit closer, so you got within 3 inches here, you can be seeing them and shooting, and if they want to charge you, well, they're going to be slowed down. So you're getting a little bit of bonus there. It is a very tight line where you've got to be in that spot where you're within 3 inches, and at the same time really kind of hindering them. So that might be not always be something you can really pull off, but if you can, definitely something to look for. Next up, we'll talk about things like our walls. And walls are something where normally it's fantastic. You want to put your casters there. Your key solos want to be behind walls. Hell, everything really wants to be behind a wall, except for kind of a Colossal. A Colossal doesn't get any defense bonus from being behind this, and the worst thing is that even though Colossals naturally have Pathfinder and they can walk through whatever they want, they can't end their movement on top of the wall. And so often when you're in a situation like this, your movement isn't enough to just get right over it, so you actually are forced to run over. And sometimes that can be horrendous. I mean, you just want to move up slightly to get in range and not be within threat range of their charges, but you can't because of this wall. So again, when you're looking at the table and you're trying to figure out where you're going to be putting your things, wall placement will be massive. Now, again, you can also use it to your benefit, almost like we did with the trees. So if you're fighting against other heavies and stuff like this, especially if you're planning to be more defensive and shooting with your Colossal, you can use that wall so that's taking up real estate. And saying, hey, especially if the beast or jack coming after you, or troops, whatever, don't have reach, you can use that wall to really reduce what can get onto you. So that can be a great way to use it defensively. Do watch out, though, that they can just spin that right on you in a second. I mean, you do something like this to use it defensively so they can't really get really good charges on you and take you out, and then all of a sudden they just line up defensively on the other side of the wall, and whereas you did not get a cover bonus, they will. So be careful. That can definitely be a trap. More often than not, it's a lot better, just kind of like with the forests, where we decide here, you know what, this guy is going to go somewhere over here, and we're going to leave this for somebody else. It's more priority with what's going to be going on here. Alright, the last one here is just the full-scale obstructions, like a house or something like that, or a big rock. And the big thing again is it's really kind of like the wall where you can't stop on it, and in fact you just can't go through it whatsoever. So this will be something that'll be very limiting to your large base, and there's very few bonuses you're going to have with it. If there is any sort of bonus, it'll be something more like how you can use the obstruction and your huge base to easily create a pocket to hide things like your casters or solos. You know, if you're running a junior or your caster, they love to be in this spot right here. You know, without paying the cost for double Colossals, this is a great way for making a little pocket that your guys can hide and be pretty much super safe. So otherwise, obstructions are pretty bad, and you have to really keep in mind where these are for when you're going to be going around. Again, if you're ever wanting to charge or something, they can set themselves up sometimes in a situation where they can get lines on you to charge you, and you can't charge them, right? Especially if there's something else like this here, right? Like, luckily now, they have the new rules where all these distances here have to be at least 5 inches, so you know your Colossal can move through. However, all this limitation can really start to limit where your Colossal can charge and end up, and they can start trying to set you up where they're in a safe spot and you can't really get to them. So really watch out for these things here. So something else to keep in mind is, of course, objectives and flags. Flags are really kind of like walls for them. They're not going to really give them any benefit. Sure, sometimes like incursion, they can score off them, but the fact that they can't stop on them can really affect their movement, so watch out for that trap. Also with these objectives, you can't move through, they can just kind of get in the way. Really keep those in mind as well. So with that, we're going to set up like a little situation here, and we'll talk about what we probably want to do. So let's say there's a forest here, we'll put an obstruction here, and a wall over here. Let's put a wall somewhere where we can see it. Well, something like that. So with that there, this is our deployment. It has lots of stuff in front of us, and we're asking ourselves, well, what are we going to want to do with this Colossal? Well, where we see the zone here, if we want to be on this side, we know that with this obstruction, we'd have to go all the way around. That's probably not what we want to do with it. If we're over here, we're having to deal with the wall, we're having to deal with the objective, so that's probably not good. So this is a pretty simple one. It's like, you know what? My Colossal is going to walk right through this and get all the way up. So that could be a real thing there. Changing this up again, let's put the wall somewhere up here in the front. Maybe we'll put a forest over here and a hill on this side. Now this is kind of a more interesting setup here, and the real reasoning for it is that we have to decide how we want to be playing our game. Now on this side we have a hill, so we can say, well, it'd be awesome to come over here because then I can see over everything and I can just shoot whatever I want. However, between the wall and the objective, I know that my movement, once I'm in this spot here, will be very limited. I mean, I could kind of move up and walk through here, but really I have a set path I have to go on. And a lot of times if I'm here, if I want to hop over, I'm going to need to run to get into that position. So that's a very limiting spot. So again, am I going to be really shooty, or am I planning to get into the zone? If I'm planning to get into the zone, I probably want to deploy more over here. I want to come up, go around this objective, get to contest the zone, and then have a lot more options for attacking after I'm there. So that's a really big thing to keep in mind with that there. Now, another thing that makes this even more interesting is when we start talking about the double colossal. Now, a lot of times what you want to do with your double colossals is you want to have them base to base, setting up that little pocket where everything behind it is safe. And if this was an empty battlefield, we could do this the whole game. We could walk up and that'd be no problem. The issues start coming up when you actually start having some terrain in here. You know, all of a sudden, if we just throw in an obstruction, it's like, well, I could come up this one side and keep them together. Over on this side, I'd kind of be like really forcing myself away, you know, I'd have to really swing in hard. Or do I want to split them up and have one on either side? Now, the problem with having one on either side, you have to be worried about that if one gets blocked, this one can be tag teamed. You know, the heavies can go after this, while this one's kind of more on the side. Plus, you're having to kind of really watch that bubble. Now, of course, with this, you are making a big pocket, and that's awesome. However, once you get past that, there'll be a hole. So you're going to have to make sure that once you get past this, you close the door right away and then have that safe pocket again. Especially if you're in that situation or you need to get up to contest the zone, you know, that pocket might have to move fairly far up. You know, it might be a thing where, okay, this Colossal, its task will be to stay back and make a safe pocket for my caster, and this Colossal is going to come up this way and contest from here. You know, all those things can be a real thing to keep in mind. So that's really what I wanted to get from this video. Just a fast thing talking about the different terrain and the different things you want to keep in mind for that. Again, I really feel that with the changes and with the new Colossals coming out, we're going to see a lot more double Colossal and even triple Colossal. So yeah, heads up for that. Should be fun. So either way, guys, this has been a Warmachine 101, and thanks for watching. Bye.